So this reading today from the book of Matthew is the very end of the book of Matthew. Probably, at least from my way of reading it, this is like one of the biggest paradigm shifts in the world that happens with this reading. And the reason that I say that is because in the Hebrew Bible, the idea of God, for most of what Protestants read, for most of what Christians read, God is kind of separate from creation. God is not part of creation. So the relationship is sort of this one of the external God that's distant and sort of like a distant critic, like commenting from far away about things that are going on in earth, on earth, in earth. And what we have with Jesus as the anointed one, as Christ, is this revelation of God in a different way. So the authority kind of shifts. It's like instead of this authority being so far away and so distant, it kind of comes to us and it presents this authority. God presents God's being to us in the form of a human being. And I say that whether you believe that Jesus is part of the Trinity or not. In other words, he as a person is revealing God's love, revealing what God means to him, what God is like to the world. And when Jesus says, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, he's speaking in the way that I spoke to you about the heart the last two sermons. He's speaking from a seat of authority inside himself that says, we know these things are written in our hearts, we can speak with authority when we have that kind of presence inside of ourselves. And we saw in his life and ministry all of the things that represented wholeness and healing to the people that were around him. He changed the idea of how God might intervene in the world. Rather than being this sweeping power that comes cascading down from heaven, it comes in the form of a human being and in relationships to each other. That in our relationships with each other, that the one lost lamb or the one woman with a coin makes a difference. That small individual human being. So just imagine all of that authority in heaven has now found its presence in this world in that form. But he says a whole lot more there. But you have to kind of remember what he has said leading up to this point. He says that he wants them to go and make disciples of the nations. Not apostles, but disciples. So what does that distinction mean to us? Well, a disciple is a student of the teacher, a follower of the teacher. In other words, a disciple is not there just to learn in an intellectual capacity what this person has to say in order to be able to quote them as an authority. They're there to be a follower, to actually embody the teaching that the teacher has given to them. So a disciple has sort of an engaged spirituality rather than just a belief or a faith. It's not about what you believe, it's about what you do. Now, an apostle, just to remind you of the definition of an apostle, is an emissary. He's someone that's sent off to deliver a message. That's completely different. Jesus didn't say, I'm sending you out to make apostles of everybody. He said, I'm sending you out to make disciples of everyone. So he's firmly planting our feet on a path. What does that path look like? Well, again, We have a paradigm shift here. Instead of power being wealth and might, strength and everything, what does he say? The greatest is the one who serves. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Unless you are like a child, you can't enter into the kingdom of heaven. So now things are really interesting when you think about going out and making disciples, because you're not going out there, with a boat or a big car. You're going on foot, relational, person to person, out into the world to serve, to be different, to be curious. I like the reference to a child because a child is so curious that if you have curiosity, you can't have judgment. If you have curiosity, you can't have judgment because you're not evaluating what's there. You're curious about finding out what's there. And if it's another human being, just think of the difference of the quality of that engagement. That when you're curious about another human being, you can hear them, you can listen to them, you can talk with them and be with them in a way that you're not evaluating whatever they're doing. You're seeing them as a mystery, as a whole person that has something to offer to you and to the world. So this going out and making disciples, it might be a little bit different than we've practiced up to this point in humanity. It's a little bit different than just proclaiming a message. It's a little bit different than saving someone. It's more engaged with that person. It's more serving that person. It's more willing to be last. It's more willing to be a child. And I liken it to the idea in Zen of there being a beginner's mind. We're always treating the world as if you're always learning things from the first time, because it sets you up inside of yourself with an attitude that allows the world to greet you in a different way. And you can greet the world in a different way. So, to summarize the last 3 sermons, all in one, we work from the heart. We're like that child with curiosity. We seek to have eyes that see from an enlightened heart. And in that heart is this gushing out of living water, a form of eternal life. And we're being asked to go out in the world in this way, to be just, to be kind, to be like a servant, to be caring enough in a way that we can subordinate some of our own kind of egocentric approaches to the world and kind of get humble about who we are as human beings. And in that humility, in that purity of heart, we see God. I'll close with what St. Francis said, that he implored people to go out into the world himself to spread the gospel. And he said, only use words if you have to. Thank you.